Okay, actually, I gotta just wait. I don't want you and me to be recorded. Okay. Oh, wait, I think I did. Stop. Okay. It's okay, we can pause. My confession is on there. Yeah. Here. Pause. There, we're on.
All right, let's call to order the policy committee meeting April 4th, and all board members are here. Randy, Brian, Rebecca. So, I'd like to approval of the agenda. So,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
I did not receive any public comments. If you have any, so get right into the policy. Let's turn it over to Randy.
All right, thank you. We have a few different things. We're going to finish up a few loose ends from the 400s this morning. And then we're going to move and thank Brian for being here for HR because we're into the 500s, which are all human resource related. So he's been busy helping us. But the last items we had within the 400s, there was a question, I believe it already passed through this committee, but it was one that was asked at the full board. And I'll bring this back on Monday with everyone as well. It was with regards to student suspensions. And I believe what the question was, if a student is suspended during the week, so let's just say, an example, they were suspended for the day on Tuesday, are they able to go to like a co-curricular event or a dance or like a game on Friday night? And the answer to that is yes, unless it's the day of the suspension. So if you're suspended on Friday and there's a game that night, no, you're not allowed to go to that event. But if you were suspended on Tuesday, you would be able to go. So it's really on the day of. And as far as things with the co-curricular code, that has different implications for our athletes and those who are covered by the code. The suspension would then impact some of their ability to participate. That's based on the code. But I think that was the question that came up with the
So the code is stricter sometimes for some activities. Okay.
For those athletes, there's implications if you're suspended.
Okay.
But if you're just a general student, we're not involved in anything, you're suspended on one day, doesn't necessarily impact you on, unless there was something specific that it was related to that, and the principal decided that that was part of it. That's not a policy piece that states that if this, then you're kind of out for the week or 2 weeks, whatever. But from a co-curricular standpoint, the suspension does impact the code. And then that falls into those acts. So just a point of clarification, but I'll bring that up on Monday as well. The next three policies are actually ones that are state law related. They're with regards to the first one's just kind of a general policy on scholarships, which is this kind of states that we have scholarships and how those pieces work. But the next two, 461 rule and 462 rule, these are with regards to the technical excellence scholarships. One is for those going to a four-year school, and one of those are going to a technical college. These are things that are set up by the state that we have to have process and policy for, and then we award those to students based on the criteria that's set up by the state, that we have to have a policy that can articulate. So Tim Schell and Ryan Borowski have reviewed these, and these are in line with the practices that we follow for administering those scholarships. So these are pretty exclusive scholarships. These are the ones that give you tuition to in-state schools. If you are in the top students in the state with regards to the academic excellence, and then a similarly situated one with the technical excellence scholarships for the tech school. Both or all of those are ready to move forward. And most of those are dictated by a little bit of our decision making as far as our processes that we have to articulate, but mainly driven by state law and requirements that we provide those scholarships to our students. Any questions? Any of those? Now we're going to move into the ones that are into the 500s, which is the HR related ones. And you're going to see a number of them that Ryan, we're all going to try to put together here because there's a lot of policy pieces moving here. The first one, I have to make sure I stay in order here and what's on the agenda. So, 510 is this one that just talks about personnel policy goals. I think it's more of just more of a philosophy statement, as opposed to something that's really kind of has a lot of policy teeth to it. It's kind of puts forth kind of what our beliefs are. WCSD does not have a recommendation for one from their policy list, and his review was just to keep it, and we agree with that. So no changes. You'll see the next set of policies on your grid, 511 through 513, are all dealing with things dealing with Title IX issues. That's really kind of your sexual harassment, those type of policies. Title IX is being reviewed at the federal level, and a decision that Barry Forbes at the School Board Association and I made as we started this process was anything related to Title IX would hold until the federal government finalized their review of Title IX. Otherwise, we'd be going through reviewing it once and then it would get changed. Anticipation, that's supposed to have been taking place sometime this year. The latest I've heard right now is that politicians probably won't touch this till after the elections in November. So we have been keeping track of which policies in each section relate to Title IX. And then Rebecca will have those, and then at that point when that gets interpreted, then we'll bring those back.
And as you're reviewing them, there's nothing in any kind of, you bring something forward if there was like urgency, like, oh, we should actually deal with this before then.
Yeah, Brian's been really looking at that. Brian being the Title IX coordinator, it's really, he looked at those policies previously. This is just kind of an additional review. We're going to jump down to staff involvement in decision making, which is 2521. Again, there's not a PRG version of this, but this is articulating more of a philosophy statement that we involve staff in our decision making process. So again, we're just going to keep looking at that.
Well, I think in my comment when we were reviewing these, like this as well as 510, I didn't really see anything that it's not really a policy, they're just kind of statements. So we're debating whether you can get rid of it or keep it. There's no reason to really define statements, I guess,
But why policy?
right. And so I didn't, if you had any thoughts on that.
I just keep it.
Yeah. That's what we learned this one.
All right. Really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes. The next item is with regards to board staff communications. And this one, the recommendation was to replace this with the policy, the PRG version. One of the things that we wanted to talk about was with regards to listening sessions. I believe right now talks about kind of the channel of communication goes through the district administrator. Generally, I agree with everything in the policy, but we do have some practices within our district that we have had for quite a few years now, with the staff listening to sessions, etc. And certainly the board has the ability to kind of move around policy as they see fit, but this is really kind of the one that articulates how we communicate with staff. And so I just think that needs to be kind of brought to your attention as you read this, and then how you want to kind of articulate, or if you want to add anything to it with regards to your current practices on listening sessions. So what we got to do is contact the principal. Comfortable with their principals right now. Or to do that principal, get some questions. Contact the principal. Is there any retribution? Principal
To the staff?
So basically, I think this policy is kind of articulating that it's basically it comes, all communication here says it comes to me. We have a question about principal or something on the building, it comes my direction, and then I help to navigate. And generally that's how it really works. And there are times just because we see each other and you guys are involved in the community, you see principals, you talk to them, etc. I've never had quite issue with that, but if there were particularly significant issues, like if Jack's bringing something up that has significant weight to it, I mean, I would expect and hope that that comes to me first before it goes to somebody else.
And I would assume that when you're onboarding new board members, it's really clear about the board member does not communicate with staff or parents or with those kind of things. I'm not a conduit right to getting things done for people.
That's part of the conversation.
Yeah.
At the same time, when I was on board, I don't remember that happening. So to be honest, I've had conversations with directly with teachers without talking to the principal.
As a board member or as a parent?
It's kind of, it's a little of both.
Yeah.
You know, I think there were separate instances of where it was as a parent. The other one was just, it was as a board member, but I think they reached out to me, so.
I think the last paragraph of the policy kind of speaks to things like that. And, you know, board members are community members. You're gonna mix and mingle, you're gonna have relationships. You know, it just kind of speaks to if you run into those situations. I think without saying it, it just expects you to circle those things back to the district administrator.
I've never felt anything like the conversations that you've had have been out of line with this policy, but all exactly as Brian said in that last paragraph. But I just wanted to articulate, I mean, as you kind of read it, and
We should this, as it says, this is the schools will be arranged through principals. Shouldn't that principal be superintendent? Is that, you know, that's the way we're operating.
right now, it's basically communication goes to me. What I do for those is, it's kind of like your listening sessions right now with students and with staff. We are friends. You come to me, you tell me if that's something you want to do, we provide that opportunity, and we open that up. So in that respect, yeah, it is probably articulated here. I just wanted to make sure that as you read this, you also had that in mind in that discussion.
Yeah, I was just reading it from both the point of view of the board and how I could abuse that if I wasn't fully aware of it. You know, you come in and you wonder, well, what are we doing as a board member? And then all of a sudden you get into situations that you shouldn't have been in. And I don't think we've got anybody on the board that would be influential that way, but I worry about climate today. You get somebody on board who's not following that. And then you have to deal with that situation when it comes.
I mean, I think this is a policy we often discuss when we have our board administrative retreats and some, we talk about these type of things. And I think that's one when Dr. Brown is in place, we have those conversations as well, but this is kind of where it relates to. This is sometimes where boards and superintendents get sideways with each other. It's kind of how that communication goes and where people are present and how you keep people. I think we've always had open dialogue amongst us, so I've been comfortable where we're at. But this is a policy that does. I just want to make sure that you're aware of it, and I'll bring those pieces up on Monday as well.
I think it's a good policy, and it was kind of in your face saying, yeah, you gotta be careful what you do as a board member.
The only question I have is Jim, principal to superintendent. It's the word which paragraph. What is the second?
Yeah, it's the blue one.
It's the red.
Oh, it's
Schools. Individuals make arrangements for visitation through the principal of the various schools. This on page 2 to 6. And you can,
That's in the rest.
It's, you know, that's the way you want it to work.
If you want to come, yeah, I think that makes sense. So we can just,
And then it's up to Randy to make contact with the principal or whoever it is.
Otherwise, I can go as a principal and it doesn't tell me that I gotta communicate with you.
that lets the superintendent then know that you're visiting school. Right, which I don't think any of us ever have an issue with, but it's, I like that change there.
And then again, if you're going as a parent, that's different.
Yeah, so that last sentence,
Yeah,
the
that
last
last
sentence of the
sentence.
paragraph just said if you're a parent. then if you're a parent.
Or if Judy's going to see the play, that's different.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's not visiting, it's not a visitation.
It's not official board meeting.
Yeah.
It's just-
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I think that's a good one, Jack. Yep.
520, 522 is staff conduct. Same order as we are.
So we have, I have on the grid and I actually have up here,
I think we need to go, let's do staff conduct first,
Yeah.
that's the general one. So 5, I'm going to jump down one item and we'll bounce back. So policy 522 is staff conduct. This is one that is, again, just more of a, but we're adopting the PRG one, it's really just talking about the general essence of staff conduct. It's going to be general policy and there's other items that will all come with. Next item, then this would be the 522.1. Restrictions on Jackson. What the number is here is this.
well, what you're seeing is, I left this on the grid, but really we're not changing 521.2 at all because we changed that back in the 400s.
Oh, got it. Okay. Oh,
And
see.
so I just
jumped
put
down.
that there as a reference.
So that's right. Yeah, but just if you're following along in the grid, 521.2 is with regards to restrictions on tobacco, nicotine, and vapor products. We changed that. That's actually found in like 3 different sections of policy.
Right.
So we just articulated that here. We just talked about the staff conduct. So now we're dropping down to 522.1, alcohol and drugs, the workplace. This is one that we are replacing our current policy with PRG item. And the only questions that we've had with this was with regards to, I think it's really not a, it's kind of talking about the blood alcohol concentration of an employee at different points. I mean, we've kept it at that 0.02. The reason that that's the number there is that you could have instances where somebody has a cold medicine or something that does spark something. So that's at such at a low level that is there. That was one that was recommended as part of the PRG from the School Board Association. There are other rules with regards to bus driving where it's I believe it's 0.0 for your CDL license and stuff. But as we reviewed this, we felt that we were comfortable with what was written here. And we felt that this represented our policy. They added up, right? Next one. 522.3. This is the employee misconduct reporting. So in the previous policy on staff conduct, it's actually covered. This is just with regards to reporting requirements for immoral conduct, etc. This kind of just goes into a little bit more detail. This is all articulated in state statutes, something that administratively we're all extremely well aware of, particularly in Brian's world. I'm very well aware of what our duties are to report different misconduct. pieces.
Reporting to the law or the
Yeah.
state.
Like sexual misconduct is basically.
So it's not in-house, it's going out, reporting out.
Yeah, this is the requirement for you to report out to the state superintendent. This is basically a licensure.
We're really feeling this.
Yeah.
because we have feel this has been addressed in other contexts. One is safety, health, staff health and safety, 523. This one we're keeping our current policy. It's very similar to the ones Ted referenced before. It's kind of a general policy. And then we look at 523.1. This is employee health examinations. And the recommendation is to adopt the PRG version here. This is, we feel very comfortable with this fitting in with our current practice that we have with regards to conditions of employment. We do utilize this in our on-site clinic or for many of these purposes. Yeah.
No, well, actually, all of every employee has to do a physical, so everybody is certified.
Next one is 523.2 and 523.2 rules. And this is with regards to our employee assistance program. After reviewing this, we looked at this as our recommendation is to use the PRG version. You'll see that very forward, recommended we keep our current policy, but I think after you took a look at it, you felt PRG version was just a very simple policy that states what we have. An employee assistance program, and the details of it are then outlined within our employee
And in HR, communications.
So that's something I know that Brian does in the HR office put an emphasis on, is making sure that that's well known. So the more basic policy that states that we have one. It's really what I think the purpose of the policy should be. And then the implementation of that comes through our practices. So for our purposes, we are not, all we are keeping is we're just keeping the policy on this one. We're not looking at the rules associated with it. Moving on by the chart. Demonstrate 520. This is the infection model.
So you have the employees right to know. Oh,
23.3.
that wasn't in your stack.
Five 23.3 is employees rate to know. And we keep our current policies. This is with regards to like our pesticides, chemicals, all those type of uses, and then other training associated with stuff.
MES sheets, where do you keep these? Can you keep those?
Every building has a copy of it. And we have digital data and stuff like that. This is addressing. Where the buildings, they could, the custodians or the head custodian maintains this. And then actually we have a chemical hygiene officer who maintains it if it's a use for like a teaching tool. Jason Rotsenberg is the person. So like all the stuff that would come under like the chemistry teachers, science teachers, in general, he's got a log of what they would use. So he maintains it. It's related to teaching. So.
And that's that position. This is inside of our chemical hygiene officer. It's usually one of our chemistry. Something of that nature. That's this type. What I've seen in the business I've worked with, I think that's consistent. But otherwise, that's the policy is looking at those material safety
employee wellness, employee wellness, which is 323.5. Well, or 3.3.4.
You just recombine this.
Yeah.
All right, so the employee wellness piece, this is one that when we reviewed this with Barry, we basically said if you have a wellness policy, you have to articulate it. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure was that as we have this policy, it was approved for us to, I think we have it articulated here.
Yep.
And it's just good that staff will be informed of the specifics of this benefit through the employee handbooks website and human resource bulletin. So we just need to add that to our policy to bring it into compliance with having an employee wellness program.
I guess the question that I've got there is, we've got 3 locations. Change it here, what if you forget? You know, should the handbook say refer to the website or the resource bulletin, you know?
So Brian, I added
Oh,
this
I'm sorry.
sentence. Staff will be informed,
The only thing I'm saying is.
Oh, sure, sure.
If you get 3 different sites,
Yeah.
and you forget one. So if you have it in the handbook, refer to the website.
Well, and so I think kind of related to that, Jack, actually, that's something we've discussed actively, is the website actually is the handbook. It's just the digital copies of the handbook. And so, and then the bulletins, that's something we send out periodically to remind people, you know, of those items, variety of items. But website and handbook are synonymous.
Maybe what we can do, Brian, is at some point, maybe there isn't a bulletin, we just say through the employee handbooks in the human resource office.
okay.
That's in your one place.
Yeah, that's really good enough.
Yeah.
So that'll read then staff will be informed of the specifics of this benefit through the employee handbooks and the human resource office. That's right.
Yeah, that's totally accurate.
How does something like that come about with the fact that you have to have a policy that states that you have that for? I'm just curious. And stuff like
I don't know the legal reason for it. I'm not
that. And
sure.
what singles this out for making such a
Right, it says here, it says the EEOC requires employers that offer a wellness program to provide a notice to employees, which is. So we have to find a way, and that was our question, was just saying, instead of having an exhibit here, can we simply state that it's found in what locations and where it's found? So it's through the equal employment opportunity.
And I believe since we posted it here, we do not need this exhibit at all. That's what we
That's what
decided.
we were saying.
Yeah.
That's correct. So what this one is keeping a very simple policy and then reference people back to those other areas.
Now we're on the bottom.
So 523.5. This is the fluids one. And what we're looking at here is actually this is addressed through our nursing policy. So as we've gone through the review in the 400s, we had a nursing policy. And that requires our nurses to then have their charge of kind of this bloodborne pathogens type of training, etc. So his review of it was we would delete it or we update this. But he stated the PRG version references it in the nursing services policy. So we went back and reviewed what we did with that policy. We did adopt the PRG version. And we felt that we could repeal these out of the policy here because they're necessary. 524 is staff ethics. And this is a very similar policy to other ones we discussed. It just really talks in general terms about ethics. So we felt we would keep and maintain the policy. Ethics and conflicts of interest. What we chose here was to do a bit of a blending. And the recommendation was to replace it with the PRG version. What we felt was important, and you'll see on the policy, we added all the yellow is actually more detailed specifics that we had from our old policy. So we felt that that was important to keep. And so we merged these two policies together. So part of it is the updated language from the PRG, and then we added some of the specifics with regards to what we had in our old policy, which we felt was important to provide detail. I think that was in line with what our conversation we had.
Do we have a limit on the size to get that?
I think that the state law is like general personal benefit or some or a low.
District will accept this for each person for the term. Is this what, schools specifically?
I think it's,
Because in the state policy, it's like 80 and 25.
I think it's nominal value. What it states. I think a lot of it is kind of articulated as your, particularly as you're procuring services, etc. Yes, it is.
Can you put a limit on it?
When you put numbers on it, then you $25 today or $25 in 10 years when we review it again. You think? By you, Jack.
Jack's really, he's into the.
He's looking to the future
He's
work.
gonna keep running through the board and stay in policy. So that's good. So, but maintaining, we thought it was important to add more of the details.
Yeah, I like it. It just helps.
Does it discuss it all in learning and stuff? If you go over things like this, like, hey, make sure you don't take that, yes, I don't, or it's just common. Does anything point to this, like, oh, I'm getting a gift? Is there any special attention brought to it when you? Not that it needs to be, I'm just curious, you know, it's here.
I can't believe that anybody reads all the policies.
I know.
and when they're hired, and, you know.
They
It's
said
like, it's like,
yeah.
you know, the athletic code, you sign it, did you ever read it?
Right, so because of that, I'm saying, is this one where, maybe they should make sure they see this one, I don't know.
I think it's a good reference.
Yeah.
You know,
I
that's-
mean, you kind of get to like the bottom, it says gifts from students, and then it says students, parents, and other patrons shall be spared from routinely giving gifts, but if they do, it should be, I mean, my Christmas tree is full of ornaments.
Yeah.
From kids.
And how many candles do you have in your house?
Yeah, exactly. So it's those type of things. I think it's trying to make sure that it's not something. of bigger.
Understood.
So we did not, we merged policies.
But I bet it comes up like with people who would give quid pro quo, like, you know, the coaching staff and keep the coach happy so he gets in a good position.
It's kind of that piece to it. We're going through procurement of some sort of a service from an agency, and they're taking everybody out to dinner beforehand. That would be prohibited.
Yeah,
So those are the type of things that aren't allowed if you're kind of in procurement. So, but if somebody says, hey, Judy, we appreciate this, here's a t-shirt. It's probably.
Yeah, and I suppose an allegation could be made that that's happening, and can we look back at this policy
Yeah.
and say definitively,
it's minor.
right?
It's really tied up into the state ethics laws too, so that's kind of what a lot of this is tied to. This is just adding a little bit more specifics and a few examples of what you have to be doing.
But is this some of the issues that came up with the basketball problem? Was you
No.
looking at this stuff? No. Okay. Now we're on to staff affairs.
Staff participation in community affairs, yes, 520.
And this is one I believe we're just looking to keep the current policy. They don't have a policy from PRG, and this is just basically stating that we prepare staff to be involved in the community. The next item is personnel records, 526. This is with regards to personnel records. Ryan, anything that looking to replace that with the PRG version? Any comments on that item?
No. Because I remember as we looked at it, actually that matches with what, I think this is more of a reminder for my department, and so it matches what we're doing.
528, student staff relations. Again, we replaced this with the PRG version. It's just a little bit more modern language, but apparently the same content, just about what's appropriate staff student relations, and keeping that with the lines of what's appropriate. Last item we have here today, we'll have to decide if we're ready to move this one forward to number. I know it's going to be a couple of questions. Ready to telework?
Yeah, so that I think of these two range, like the one that at this time I could say where it's set is the policy.
Yeah.
The rule would be one I want to look at based on Barry's email to us.
Let's just do this since we have a lot. Let's just not act on this policy right now, and we'll bring that one back as part of the next batch.
Okay.
Because I'd rather keep the policy and the associated guidelines and rules together, so we don't lose track of it. But basically, we don't have a lot of telework. We have a few people that are in that realm, but we do need to have a policy that articulates these things. Some of the things that we're trying to determine better is with regards to reimbursement for travel. And how does that work if your assignment is at home? We have some clarity on that, but we haven't put the language towards that. Dictated by.
So what kind of telework would you do? Teaching or?
No, well, I would say the policy refers to situations like where we would have it would identify like a snow day where teachers were taking this up home is an informal example of telework, right? That would not be like precedent setting, or that would not be binding. I'd say our most common examples of telework that we've had in the last year. We've had staff members that are, like, due to a medical reason, usually illness, unable to come to work, but they still want to run an IEP via Zoom. So we set this up because then it just kind of covers our liability for having them do something on Zoom from home.
If they're sick, and can't make it to work, do we expect them?
No, we wouldn't, we don't, we don't put it as a requirement, but if they're like, yeah, I'd still like to do this.
But then when it comes to compensation, we don't require them when they say, I want to, and that's great. It would be enough.
Well, it would
I'm
be.
just trying to figure out how
Sure.
the compensation works. You know,
If it's a long enough period of time that it would be identified, we would not have them use paid time off. We would include it within the wages we're already paying. So they wouldn't have to use sick hours, for example, if they're gonna spend 2 hours facilitating an IT. So like they would take a day, 6 hours, day being 8 hours, they'd take 6 hours of sick time. And then they would be actually staying on the clock, if you would, for 2 hours to run the meeting, but they'd be running it from home.
We had a this a few years ago, Brian, if you remember, we had a teacher who taught in the AP class.
Yeah.
Who couldn't find an AP teacher, but they needed to be home for
That-
whatever reason, and we allowed that.
Yeah, that was in the midst of the year after COVID that we were just coming back.
So that was a little bit different, but that wasn't, we don't have a lot, we have anybody in telework right now? No. I mean, it's pretty minimal, and I think anything that would probably fall under here is gonna be a special circumstance that we're just gonna deal with and fill up. Or,
This isn't in response to COVID, that was unusual, so, but this is a policy that's.
So
something
that actually, the original policy
was,
was absolutely written for COVID purposes. This revision is one that the School Board Association has, whatever you want to say, has modified or adapted since that time. I don't know when they created theirs, but that's what we first put ours in.
So with the COVID, the first time this policy was,
we had to create one at that time to. But I think there's some legalities around telework, so we're making sure that we're in line with it.
And this is general enough to cover what might come along.
Yeah, actually, I really like their, the policy itself is fine, it's pretty generic, but the rule actually adds a lot of specificity to it, which is, I think, really helpful. But we had one big question we had to push back to the School Board Association, because I didn't know the answer, which was about where a staff person is assigned, and then if you ask them to come to work, if that's compensable. And so we learned, and we'll have to make sure the policy is we assign someone to be only a worker at home. Then they would, if we delegate that that's your work site, and then we have them come in, we actually have to pay them for the travel time. So that again is how you develop your agreements then is you have a dual work site, so that it's commuting and not travel.
You could have situations, that we don't have this in our district, but a district could have an online class, and you have a teacher who's working from home to deliver that online class. I'm sure that's happening in different parts. of the
Yes,
state.
McFarland.
Yeah.
With their virtual school probably does that.
At-home teachers who are teaching fully virtual for a virtual learning experience, but don't need to be in a classroom at school. We don't have any of those, but in the event you ever would, this would start to address that. But it would also address that during the reason we have somebody like this, one of the people who work in our HR department or any of our offices out here, for any reason needed to or had to be at home, and we had to create a telework environment. This would look at that.
And it's actually,
your point, though.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, to your point, if there's compensation involved, is it in this policy or is it HR?
It goes into the policy because the contracts don't, or assignments, so contracts for salary employees, work assignments for our hourly employees, doesn't go into that level of detail. And so the policy would identify that. Or business office practices and/or HR department practices. But also, like, what I was gonna say was that the rule and policy both identified certain rules are not gonna be generally eligible for any kind of telework, you know. And actually specify supervision of children, right? We can't supervise them through a screen very well. Custodial work, it's just unlikely to be appropriate for those types of assignments. And it kind of outlines that. Or it doesn't kind of, doesn't.
So I take a motion to move on these policies. There was one noted exception on the policy for board staff communications to go through superintendent, otherwise.
So moved.
Well,
So you mentioned changes.
And and seconded that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks for cleaning it up.
Before we adjourn, if we could schedule another policy meeting.
In April would be great, because then we can keep this little family together.
Okay.
Does this family take it to the end?
Well, all depends on how you reorg it in a couple of weeks. So if you like to request the policies, number one request.
Yeah,
you
we
can
should do that. Let's
absolutely-
all request
You
number
can
one,
all-
okay?
That's right.
All right.
Well, what do we bring?
Yeah, I tell you, at this point, the date is fine. Business.
Life happens.
This one raised my salary.
People are overpaid now.
Week of the 15th.
Seven thirty again.
What about the
We have-
17th or 18th?
Yeah.
I can't do 17 or 18.
Thank you.
Can we do it? Yeah, keep it towards the beginning of the week.
I could,
So, that's what we can make it work.
I could do early
I'd like 7:30.
or late. Yeah, 7:30 works.
Is that what you Yeah.
That's all we have.
All right. So. make a motion again.
So move. I made the motion. You did the second.
All in favor?
Aye. Let's get this straight so we get credit.
Yeah. That's very important.
Okay.
I don't want to be controlling that person.
Oh, Jack.
I've struggled with joy.
Spread the joy.
You know, when you